Welcome back to the Hookup Baits Podcast. We got Hayden Cota here.
What's going on, guys?
SD Bassman Cota.
Yeah,
Yep.
right. A Hookup Baits ambassador. You're one of our newest Grom ambassadors.
Yeah.
But you've been fishing with your buddy Patrick for many years.
For the last 5 years, I've been fishing hookup baits with him.
Yeah. So you probably should have been a Hookup Baits ambassador years ago, but it's all right.
I think like most ambassadors, you make yourself an ambassador before Hookup Baits invites you into the fold. And if you are out there doing it on your own and get noticed, that's how it happens. So anybody that's asking, how do I become an ambassador? Just become one on your own.
Exactly.
You know, and that's exactly what you did.
100% is, I memean, I get asked daily, how do I get sponsored? How do I be an ambassador? I want to be an ambassador.
I want to be like Hayden.
Yeah. and then, you know, and most of them, they'll say us, and then I'll go to their page and look. There's nothing said about Hookup Baits ever. I'm like, so I'm just automatically making you an ambassador? I don't understand why you're even asking me. But like exactly as that, you make yourself an ambassador first, and then you come in as part of the team, you know?
Yeah, on your own.
Yeah, so, and that's exactly what, you know, fishing with Patrick. And then actually your buddy Patrick's like, you know, he came to us while he's interning.
Yeah.
He's like, Cota, Hayden should be really part of the ambassador team. And he said he would be so stoked and he'd be good for it. So your buddy, you know, really set it up for you. And I was like, yeah, you're right. He would be, so.
He wingmanned you in pretty good there.
Well, what set me off with being an ambassador is I'm a freshwater fisherman. That's my thing right there, is just freshwater fishing is just my joy in life. And with him, he brought me to saltwater, and I love saltwater fishing, do not get me wrong, but I didn't want to be an ambassador for saltwater. I didn't want to feel like I have to promote it for saltwater. And so what I did is I started strictly fishing them in freshwater and showed people how well these baits will perform in freshwater. And that's what brought me to becoming an ambassador, is just doing something different than everyone else was doing. Yeah,
and that was too. It's like, you know, the freshwater bass market is the hardest market to get in.
Yeah.
You know, trout was very easy. Saltwater is very easy. The freshwater bass is this. Those freshwater bass guys only listen to what the Kevin Van Dams and all these guys are using. That's what they use.
Well, and they're only going to use what's
going to touch.
And they're only going to use what's a secret, because everybody, like you guys, will say you don't want to use what everybody's using. You want to have something that stands out.
And then the bass guys that do well in tournaments and stuff using hookup baits, they ain't going to tell anybody that they're using hookup baits. You know?
I got a story for you guys. So I went out fishing with his name. I think his name's Parker Wright. Yeah, so his name's Parker Wright, and I DM'd him on Instagram and I got a hold of him. He's a fishing guide and he's been fishing his whole life. He's huge into tournaments. He's sponsored by Mega Bass, and he took me out with my stepdad, and we were fishing all day. We were catching fish here and there, and I was like, no, I'm going to try to talk to him about a hookup bait. So I tied on a 1/8 ounce purple on his bait, and he was so surprised and took this bait into he was just all over it. Like, he went fishing. He took the front of the boat. Like, it's supposed to be a guided trip. Like, I'm supposed to be like the main person. He's supposed to show where these fish are. I gave him a hookup bait. This dude turned into a little kid again. He's like flipping at any fish he sees. Like, it's a little half-pound bass. Flip a little hookup bait out of him to catch him. But he got to the front of the boat and he just performed better than any. First time ever throwing it, and he did better than me. And I've been throwing it for 2 years. And this guy just took it in his own way. And he took a neon marker and he marked the tail on the neon. It was a purple bait, and he caught 10 fish in the matter of 20 minutes on just one school, and he just completely outperformed me in general. And I've been fishing. I've been doing it for 2 years with hookup baits, but this dude was geeking over it. And now on his guided trips, he's been texting me. He's saying thanking me because he's been showing people how to throw this bait, and just because it's so easy. It's so easy for people to throw this bait and learn how to fish because of this bait, like it did with him, Patrick, and it just helps a lot.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I've had the same experience with my buddy Don Brown, which fished the BAS tour and had been a guide for 30-some years, you know, all bass fishing, Clear Lake and Oroville. And, you know, they work, but they don't, you know, my other stuff works better until I fished with them.
Yeah.
And now it's the only thing he uses, and it's the only thing all his customers on all his guided trips use is 100% hookup baits. You know, so it's definitely an effective bait for for the freshwater bass. You know, so and you're right. Part of that is you coming on is we need to fill that gap. We needed an ambassador in the freshwater bass world. You know,
that's my thing right there. Yeah. I took this bait and kinked it in so many different ways to my own liking, and it just performed so well.
Yeah. And your main what I see in your Instagram is what I see most of your stuff is you do a lot of float tube fishing.
A lot of float tube fishing, yeah.
So a day, walk me through what a day of fishing for you is like. When I was a kid, it was the same thing. Mm-hmm. For me, it was like I had this low-key float tube that was like as stripped down as you could get, and it was camouflage, and it had a little strap on it. Dude, I could throw that thing on my shoulder and ride my bike. I could walk through the worst stuff. So to explain from your pad, I want to go fishing, how a typical trip goes.
Well, just for right now, we don't have a place to put a boat. We want a boat. I've always wanted one. We just don't have the place for it because it's like another car basically, but it needs to be maintained. And so for me, fishing with David, he's another dad to me. He like brought fishing to me. I was like 8 years old, and he would fish the San Diego River a lot in a float tube. And he took me one time and he tied a rope from his tube to mine, and he put me like in these giant pair of waders, and I'm like don't know what I'm doing because this is like my first time like actually like trying to fish freshwater like with artificial baits, and he tied me to him. And so he's kicking along in his float tube, and he tied me to him, and he's just dragging me along with him down the river. And I'm like flipping these tullies and catching fish. Like, I have pictures of me of like being, you can only see my head sticking out of
the tube. You're like holding it like this.
And I'm like, I can barely see it. I'm still catching fish. But that's what like kicked a float tubing off for me, is like you can get into so many low key areas that shore pounders and boats cannot get into. And I've been into a lot of areas around San Diego where a float tube has just outperformed a lot. And it's another thing, freshwater bass are so finicky. Like at El Cap, I'll go to big lakes in this float tube. And at El Cap, it's my favorite lake to go to. I'll go right off the dock or whatever. And it's just, you're silent. Those fish don't hear you coming. I'll be like, I'll go straight down the shore. Like I'll pull up on the shoreline, and there'll be like 2 or 3 fish sitting right next to me, and I can flip at them and catch them. But if I do that on a boat, they're gone.
Yeah.
Right. It just gives, like, float tubing gives you slight advantages. Yes, you fish around the area that are heavily populated because you can't get back to where boats go, but I don't know, it's just something I've always grown up doing. I love it. It's just, I feel more connected with the lake too. I'm always in the water. I'm always just like around of what's going, like aware of what's going on, and it's just something grown up doing.
Yeah, float tubes are cool. I spent many years in a float
tube.
Oh yeah, well, that was all trout fishing for me.
I got paid a compliment once that I fish slow well, and it was from somebody that Cash and I really like looked up to, and they do freshwater and all that stuff too. And you think, well, where'd that come from? Well, where does it come from? You got to work so hard in a float tube to get where you are, more than a kayak. You're less mobile. So once you're there, you are going to fan cast everything.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Then you're going to vertical everything. Then you're going to flip. I mean, you put in the work when you're on a float tube like that. So I think you're going to see the benefits of that as if you move to something else, a different platform, and bring those same skills into it. You know, like you said, you're like a super ninja. You're really quiet.
Yeah, you're super quiet. Those fish don't get spooked off as easy, and it's just, you do a lot more people can do. I mean,
right.
For sure.
My biggest largemouth bass is still out of a fresh tube.
Yep, same here.
Just spinning me around like a donut. It was like 6 feet of water, and this thing was just taking advantage of me. So, a fun way to catch fish.
Yeah, I think
what's your biggest?
My biggest largemouth was
in a float.
It was 9.87 pounds.
Woo!
And it was super early in the morning, and it was actually funny because there was a huge tournament that was about to go on. But we're in a float tube. Me and my stepdad are in a float tube, and we're like 5 in the morning. It's still dark, but all these boats are just waiting. There's like probably 50 boats just sitting out here by the ramp, and me and him just we like go and we book it because we see all these giant bass blowing up in the grass mat. They're feeding on the shad, and I had a big old white frog tied on, and I threw on top of this grass mat, and this thing just blew up on it, and it was just a memory I'll never forget. And then all these fishermen, I think we had like 20 boats around us because they saw the size of this fish, and they're in a tournament, and they're like, if these fish are around, I want to be around them. But me and him, like, there's just one pocket at El Cap when the water was up higher in this grass. Me and him, like, blocked it out. Like, he's over here sitting on a float tube, and I'm, like, 20 feet away from him. And me and him were just fan casting all these grass mats and just catching all these giant bass while we have too many people surrounding us, and, like, they're all pissed off they're in the tournament.
Imagine.
And then there was it was, like, the next weekend after, no, it was the weekend before I caught my biggest one. The same thing happened. There was another tournament. There's all these boats around, and me and him are seeing these fish blow up in the same grass mat. We kick out there. We get out there as quick as we can. And me and him double up on 2 8-pound largemouth, and that was probably our best double ever. And he's been fishing 30 years of his life. That was the best double he's ever had. 2 8-pound largemouth at the same time out of the same grass mat on the same bait is just
incredible.
I think I saw a post like that of you guys.
There's a picture of, I think it's like pinned post on Instagram. It's just me holding these 2 giant largemouth bass.
And your stepdad is Hambone Hammond on Instagram.
Hammond,
yeah, I always see you guys out together. You guys are a good team.
Yeah, he brought fishing to me when I was very young. That was my first time ever fishing was in Big Bear. And I was like 5 years old, and he tied on a night crawler on my pole, and I think I caught like 13 bass off this one dock when the water was like super high there, and it was just, that's what started off for me.
Oh, cool.
So my little push button pull.
So what is your favorite hookup bait? Like your go-to hookup bait?
For saltwater, I'm going to say the 5/8 purple. The 5/8 purple is my go-to color. I've always loved purple. Yeah. And
purple's a sleeper color. We
it
don't
is.
sell a ton of them, but it's one of my favorites.
The purple is definitely my favorite. It's caught my biggest fish. Like almost all of my PBs with the hookup bait are on the purple.
Wow.
And
very cool.
Freshwater, I'm going to have to go with, I don't know, it's either the 1/8 shad white, because that brought me my biggest largemouth on the hookup bait, or it's the quarter purple. The quarter purple just...
Yeah, purple again.
No sardine, huh? No
the sardine actually works really well. The mint works really well. The chovy, they all perform very well, but I've always done best and caught my biggest fish on those extraordinary colors. The purple.
Oh, very cool. That's awesome. Yeah, everyone says sardine. So
I'm going to have to try the purple next time I go fresh. Yeah.
I don't know if I've used purple too much freshwater either.
I always go chovy sardine. I think super bait color, but then I don't remember that purple is a full on bait color.
Yeah, so the threadfin, they're translucent. They're like a silvery purple. Like when they're in the sun, those threadfin shad, which is the majority of like our bait in San Diego.
Yeah, they have that purple sheen just like an anchovy does, that kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, purple's always been a color for bass.
Yeah.
I mean, forever.
Bluegills are purple.
So it makes sense. So what is your PB on saltwater and then your freshwater with hookup baits?
My freshwater hookup bait PB was, I think, just right at 6 pounds, basically. It was on the 1/8 shad white, and that fish was like, I don't think I was ever so excited over a largemouth of that size. Just because I was on a hookup bait, and it was funny because it was on Patrick's rod. And so that made everything a lot better. And
it's always funny. You pick up your buddy's rod and catch a big fish on it.
And then saltwater, I think it was on the boat with you. We went out to the pipe, and me and him both caught our BB sand bass. Me and Patrick both.
That was just recently.
Yeah, and I think it was just right at 6 pounds. His was exactly at 6 pounds too. And
some good fish.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. We got out there, and these, from their Grom trips, they both got seasick. They both know they have a problem with seasick, and then they're like, then they're both interning at the shop, and they're like, all right, I think we can do it.
We're gonna do it. We got to do it. Pat, what, you gonna do the thing?
We're gonna do it.
I did everything. I tried to prevent all that happening. I caught the 6 pound sand bass. I caught a bunch of other good sized ones, and it was like an hour into the trip. I think I puked 9 times.
Yeah.
Wow.
And, as soon as we got to the pipe, all right, boys, let's go. Yeah. And I think you caught yours on the first drop.
Yeah,
and then Patrick caught his on the third drop. So we immediately had 2 6 pound sand bass.
Yeah, and it was like, it was amazing.
And then it just went into puke fist after
that. As soon as that happened, I had to leave the trip early. I couldn't get stable again.
Yeah. So you had to come back to the bay.
Yeah.
You gotta hit the reset sometimes.
I think
get off the boat.
Bass,
Or dive in the water. One of the two. That's what I hear.
Oh, really? Jump in the water?
I heard that does it.
Really?
Never heard that.
I don't know. Maybe it's just a hazing thing where people trying to push you in. I don't know. I don't get seasick. I thought I got seasick once, but I was drinking beer and I barfed once and I was fine. So I didn't know if it was beer drinking or if it was a seasick. So don't drink beer.
Yeah, like I wish I can get out there and fish with all the guys out on the ocean and just like catch these yellowtail and catch all these big bass, but I can't. I don't know. Something with me just can't do it. So that's where freshwater. That's why people are just thrive in freshwater. Freshwater is my game.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. As long as you're fishing, right?
Exactly.
Just gotta shred whatever you're shredding, and it doesn't matter. Then all the guys catching yellowtail are gonna be like, "Dude, I want to go get a huge bass like that kid in the float tube."
Right. I mean, to me, really, it's like, like where I do all this saltwater fishing, but then I do a lot of trout fishing, and you get so many people like, I don't fish trout. And then to me, catching a 5 pound trout on a trout rod is the same as catching a 20 pound yellowtail on a yellowtail rod. It's the same difference. It's the same stoke. It's the same everything. Yeah. It's all just reference to each other.
But freshwater, and I give you credit, is it's just so everything's just so much hyper exaggerated. Like those trips to Pyramid, I learned a lot about trout fishing. But, dude, I learned way more about saltwater fishing by the applications that we were doing and the little tweaks that you do and then how they work and all the micro adjustments and, things. When I fished the first day with Chad, I kind of looked what he did and tried to, model what you're doing. And then I was like, hey, the next day, I'm like, you're tapping it this many times and reeling it this many times. And he's like, you're watching that stuff?
Yeah,
and I'm like,
what?
well, yeah. I mean, I'm trying to figure this out. So it's like the subtlest things.
Yeah, I remember when you said it. You're doing 4 rod tips to
per
each
one
crank.
turn on a
I'm
crank.
Like, what?
Yeah. But those subtle things could be the difference between getting bit and not bit in fresh, right?
Freshwater is a whole different game with that. I mean, the first time I took Patrick freshwater fishing, he was just like, because his favorite YouTuber at the time was Blacktip Page. This guy's the most erratic saltwater fisherman you ever seen in your life. And I think even like when we went on the Grom trip, Chad was making fun of him because this kid was like reeling in a spotty, but he's like cranking this thing and like going all crazy. It was so funny. But like with freshwater, I had to like teach him how to like calm down and slow down and like learn how to like fish slow for these guys because they're a lot finicker of a fish and it changes everything. I don't know, freshwater is just difficult, but a lot of people don't have the patience for it at all.
Yeah.
And it's something I grew up doing, so I learned how to have the patience for it.
Right.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Now, which one of you two cut that big stingray on the Grom trip?
Oh,
that was
Patrick.
Patrick? Yeah, that was
he was
awesome.
hooked in the mouth, too. He caught a 75-pound bat ray, and it was hooked in the mouth on the bait. That thing
With what size bait?
It was a quarter. I think it was a quarter.
That's
purple,
probably
right?
one of the biggest fish caught on a quarter.
It's
I got
big.
a 30-pound angel shark, ate a hub straight on. That's the biggest.
He got
heaviest.
bit twice that day. The first one broke him off. It's like broke off, and then he hooked another one. And it's like we followed it around in the boat and everything, and actually landed it. Big old as white as his tail.
Yeah.
And, on a bay rod. It was awesome.
My stepdad in freshwater, we were fishing this rock pile in the evening, and we had like the last 30 minutes of daylight, and he hooks this catfish, and he fought this catfish for 30 minutes, and this thing, he gets it, and we're in float tubes, keep in mind, he gets this thing to his legs. It's his 8-pound line with a 1/8 ounce brown, and it's probably like a 50-pound catfish. This thing, the size of the head was like a foot wide, and it was like all dark and black and white topped, zombie looking catfish. But he couldn't, it was so big, he couldn't lift it with his hand because he was in a float tube and it was just like taking him down.
It'll pop your tube, those pet fins. Yeah.
So what he did, he had to like lift it up on his legs in the float tube. And this thing was probably the biggest freshwater fish I've seen ever. Like it was crazy.
Caught an underwater dragon.
Mm-hmm.
You guys catch a lot of big catfish while you're
the
bass
catfish,
fishing with the hookup baits.
those catfish love the hookup baits. I mean, Patrick's caught so many, I've caught a couple. I mean, David, he's hooked into the most catfish I've ever seen on a hookup bait. I don't know what he does differently, but the amount of giant catfish he's hooked into, like he was on the boat with his dad, and he hooked into the catfish. He fights it for like 10 minutes, and I like decided to like try to fight it because I was bored. And so he handed me the rod, and I fight this thing for like 20 minutes, and he comes over in the trolling motor. He's gonna try to net it, and I don't know how big this catfish was, but those catfish love it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool stuff. It's a hashtag hookup baits catch everything.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they do. I've caught octopuses on hooked baits. I'm like, surprised. It's funny.
So you had your first year of interning at the hookup bait shop this year.
Yeah, that was, I don't know, it was kind of life-changing in a way because like it showed me a responsibility of like having to wake up in the morning and like go to work, and just it was something I enjoyed. It showed me how well these baits actually perform and like everything that goes into them because I didn't really know them before. Mm-hmm. Like I always just bought them and talked about them. I never knew how much went into these baits, and I don't know, it showed me responsibility. Like Patrick's a very well scholared student, and for me, school isn't my thing at all.
It wasn't my thing either.
No, it was just straight fishing, and I don't know, I'm not going to college, I'm not doing any of that, and this helped me, like, showed responsibility to me, and, like, showed what I'm, like, what's next in my life, because I'm going to work after high school, and it's kind of just another stepping stone in life.
Yeah, you already asked to be a hookup bait lifer, huh?
Yeah.
So just with what you're saying, there's a guy gave me some advice as a kid, and I've probably said this before. I say it to everybody, but it's really like the best advice I've ever got. And I wish it was from my dad so I could say my dad told me, but it was one of his buddies. And his son was in the music, and he was in a band, and then he got into recording, and then he was a producer. And then he was a successful producer, and he was doing all this stuff for, like, well-known bands. Maybe not my favorite band, but they're ones that are getting popular play and all that. And he was like an old hippie dude that lived up in Santa Barbara, and he's a friend of our parents. And he's like, hey, he goes, the advice I gave my son was whatever you like to do, just keep doing it. So in that, you know, if you are trying to find a career in a certain path, just keep doing something in that regard, because life's is networking. And, you know, at first people might think, oh, he's a kid that's always fishing. He's just the guy that fishes. And he's a dork for fishing or whatever it is. Maybe he's cool for fishing. And then it goes by. And then eventually they're like, when people have questions, they're like, about fishing, they're like, oh, Hayden. Yeah. He knows everything about fishing. And then next thing you know, you're like the guru at it. Yeah. So as simple as that advice is, it was really, really cool. And that's what he told his son. Because I was like, man, how did he get to that position? So if you like something, keep doing it. You know?
Yeah, tournament fishing, I want to do it so bad. It is something I've always been thriving for, and I just never had the boat or the place to put a boat to do it. And so I'm waiting. So I'm gonna start working after high school, and I'm planning on getting myself a boat and having a place for it. And that's when I'm gonna start my tournament fishing. And it's something I've wanted to do for a living, and it's something I love. Yeah. Don't plan on stopping for sure.
Yeah, you'll do amazing. I know it. You know, just. That hard work and everything that you just said, there's a road that you have to follow to do it, and then when you get it, it'll just be that much sweeter. And everything you know about fishing and the way you break down spots and all that, now you'll be able to break down 50 spots in a day, as where now you're breaking down 5. You know, you'll do that same process that you've learned, but you'll be able to do it over the whole place, which is really cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, we enjoyed having you. In the shop. You learned well and everything else. So let's close with, what was your favorite memory on the Hookup Baits boat on those Grom trips?
Honestly,
or any other trip.
I think it was.
You've been on there a few times now.
I think it was the second trip we went on where we tried to go out, and it was our first time. Me and Patrick's first time going outside of the bay, and we had to come in because I got seasick, and then I had to come in, and we had to go in even farther to the back bay. And that back bay trip, catching all those giant halibut, and there's pictures of me.
I can't remember how many legal halibut.
Oh, I think we counted like 12 or something like that.
Yeah. You guys got a lot of remember
giant halibut that day, and I think that was probably my favorite memory in the boat, because that's what kicked off everything for me with Hookup Baits, and I just had so much fun. Yeah, catching all those fish. I mean, it was a spotted bay bass every cast, or you catching that one halibut. And there was pictures of me and Patrick holding out these 2 giant halibut with the biggest smile on my face, and it was just a great trip all around.
I saw you posted that recently for the 7-year memory, and I was like, oh my gosh, look how little they are. You know, like, what? That's the guys. Like, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. We need to bring that Grom program back. So.
That Grom program was definitely life-changing
another
for fishing.
Thing, the COVID killed.
It's about that time. I think the world would be accepting of it, you know, if it were to be out there again. So.
Yeah, so, just a little something. It's coming back. Maybe not as big as we did before, because I don't have that much time anymore.
Yeah.
But we're going to bring it back.
But it's definitely a great program that needs to come back, I think. Yeah, for sure. Especially for the younger generation, to just give them that excitement.
Well, it's just, you guys, and then just all the other Groms, and just, just what it's done for our family, just having the Grom program. So it's definitely a thing that will be coming back and get more guys like you.
Yeah. And when you become the big pro bass guy, remember us and take us out on a Grom trip on your system, you know.
or a senior trip. Or
a senior.
Exactly. Yeah. That Hookup Bait's always going to be my tackle box for the rest of my life. That it outperforms everything, and it's something that people do not throw and for freshwater, and that's my big advantage with it. Is I want to show people how well it performs, but it's also going to be my secret little thing I got going on.
Well, so how are you going to show them if it's a secret?
Well,
you show them something. Don't show them your secret.
I can't show them everything, but I'll show them something.
Right.
Awesome. Well, it's good having you, man.
Sweet. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.